Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. I'd like to welcome you all on this wet Saturday morning. Appreciate your enthusiasm and inspiration to learn about how the Bhakti Shastri course we're doing is linked to deity worship and temple, connected to temple. So today we're very fortunate to have His Grace Narsimha Kawach Prabhu Ki. He is a senior disciple of His Holiness Indradumna Swami, and he has become the deity worship minister for how many years now? In many lifetimes.
No, wow.
So he is an expert, and any standards, authorities you want, any questions you have, you can discuss. So let's hear from Narsimha Kawach Prabhu, Bhakti Shastras and Pancharatric Vidhi, deity worship. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So, thank you very much for having me. Is it possible you can turn that down a bit? It's kind of a little, a little bit too loud for me. So it's very nice to see you're all, participating in this Bhakti Shastri program. And Srila Prabhupada gave direction for different books that he wanted to be studied by the devotees who were attending Bhakti Shastri. And one of those books was the Archana Padati, which you may know was the original handbook on deity worship, which was put together by first off by Nitai, then by Jaitirtha. And this book is primarily focusing on temple worship. And Archana Padati basically just means a guidebook for worship, or just a method of doing worship. I'm currently engaged in revising this kind of deity worship book, and the deity worship book was previously called Pancharat Pradeep, which means illumination on Pancharatra. But it's not really an illumination on Pancharatra at all. It's actually a deity worship book. It's a Padati. So we're renaming it. We're going to call it Method of Worship, because that's the name that Prabhupada gave. He said, very soon I'll be sending you one book called Method of Worship. So that's the name we're giving it. And that book will have two divisions. One will be the Archana Padati, which will give guidelines on deity worship, basically step-by-step procedures, just like, when you're making a cake, it says, you get this, and you mix it with that, and you do this, and you do this for 5 minutes, and you turn the oven up to that, and you do this. So it's all just that kind of thing. It's just like a cookbook on how to worship Krishna. And then there'll be another book, there's two books, and the other book will be called Explanation of Worship. So it just goes through all the different facets of worship, all the different items we offer to the deity and things like that, and explains them. What it is, how it's made, why you do it, etc. like that. If there's any benefits. There's many things where Sanatana Goswami describes the benefits of offering various things to the Lord. So any of those sections that are relevant, we're also including that there. So to help us, understand more about the process of worship. So, that's what we're working on. That's what Prabhupada wanted the Bhakti Shastris to study. But not that he wanted it, when Prabhupada asked them to do the deity worship book, he said, I've asked them to make Hari Bhaktivilas shortcut version. So they're not more than 10 pages. So I'm not so advanced that I can present it in 10 pages. It's more like 600 pages. But anyhow, but I guess part of the reason for the lengthiness, if you just took the basic, the general standard of worship for say Gaur Nitai, that would be about 10 pages. But what we've done is, because a lot of, myself, I find, like, when you say, for instance, the description is for Gaur Nitai, but I'm worshiping Radha Krishna, I've got to flick it backwards and forwards for the mantras. So it's kind of annoying. So I've got, what we've done is we've got Gaur Nitai, Jagannath Subhadra, Radha Krishna and Shalagram will all have their separate explanation, and that's divided into simple, general, elaborate. So, you don't have to flick backwards and forwards for mantras anymore. So just make it easy. Therefore, it sort of naturally makes it bulky. So we've tried to, as much as we can, honour Srila Prabhupada's instructions, but at the same time make it useful for devotees. So what I wanted to talk about today, and this is one of the fundamental underpinnings of deity worship, devotional service, is the two facets of our practice called Pancharatrika Vidhi and Bhagwat Vidhi. Are you familiar with these terms at all? Anyone knows what these terms? Can someone give me a short definition of what Pancharatrika Vidhi means? Any ideas? We have a brave volunteer. Come on, you won't get marked on it. Yeah, Prabhu.
So, Pancharatric Vidhi is what I understand is how to do the achaman, and then how to invite deities, and then doing the various offerings. I mean, offering flowers or doing abhishek, basic abhishek, and then offering flowers or chandan, and then incense stick and or deep darshan, and then offering the prasad.
Okay. So these are facets of Pancharatrika Vidhi. That's a good introduction to that. Would anyone like to add anything to what's your name, Prabhu? Shubha. Shubha Krishna. Very Shubha. Shubha Varerevam. Jai Janardan. The main shalagram in Mayapur is called Janardan. So you're the servant of Janardan.
The 5 times we do it in a day. Pancharatric.
Okay. Well, that's interesting you say that, because there are a number of different explanations of Pancharatra, where it's come from, what it means and things like that. So Pancharatra can mean, it's defined in some places as 5 kinds of knowledge. Other places it's defined as knowledge which is given over 5 nights. You know, so there's a lot of different explanations, and if you study them all it gets quite confusing. It's like, what does it mean, you know? So basically it's, you know, you had something you want to say, Prabhu? No?
My understanding is that it's worship according to the Pancharatra Shastras given by Narada Muni.
Uh-huh.
Oh, that's one aspect of it.
That's one aspect of it, for sure. Anything else? No? So essentially, Vidhi means rules. Yeah? The Vidhi means a rule. Like, you've got a Vidhi for this, you've got a Vidhi for that, you know. There's just like, you know, you've got an iPhone here, there's rules on how to use it and how not to use it. You know, if you start using it the wrong way, it'll stop working. And you won't get the results. So by following the rules, I was just listening yesterday to a class, Prabhupada was talking about that, about human life is meant for following rules. And there's rules that govern our existence here in this world. And by following those rules, we get the result, we get the benefit. But we see the modern society, they don't want to follow any rules, they just want to, you know, devil may care, do as you please, you know, if it feels good, do it, you know, all that kind of modern day philosophy. Well, it's not so modern because it's been there for many, many thousands of years. But the thing is that they want to do as they please, yet they expect to get the results. But it doesn't work like that. It's just like, you know, whenever you get a computer, whenever you get a car, there's a manual on how to use, you know, like I bought this camera a few years ago, and it's got a 700-page manual on how to use it. It's like, oh my God, what a book! You know, it's like an encyclopedia. Yet, you know, there's functions on the camera, you know, because of my previous camera, it functioned a little bit differently. So I'm thinking, oh, it's the same, but it's not. When I try to do something with the camera the way I did it on the previous model, it doesn't work. I'm scratching my head. What's going on? I better read the manual. Oh, okay, it doesn't do that. It does this, you know. So by reading the manual, then you find out how to do things. So in the same way, these rules that are given in the various shastras, and there are many, you know, there are many Pancharatric texts. There's 108 considered by Vaishnavas as prominent, and there's many more than that. I think there's more than 200. Yet there is one that was written by Narad Muni called the Narad Pancharatra. Unfortunately, as far as I can understand, that book is no longer available, as are many of these texts. They're not available anymore. And essentially, the Pancharatra gives us guidance on how to live in this world. It's not just about deity worship. It's about all facets of life. You know, because even we see with the deity worship manuals, they'll often talk about, you rising in the morning, taking bath, how to take bath. Now that's not directly related to deity worship. How to go to the toilet is not directly related to deity worship, or how to brush your teeth or whatever, is not directly related to deity worship. But Pancharatric texts cover all these types of things. So the whole idea behind the Pancharatra is how to live a regulated life. And what's the purpose of the regulated life? Why do we want to lead a regulated life? Any suggestions? What's the benefit of leading a regulated life? Is it beneficial? If it's not beneficial, tell me what it is.
So we follow the disciplines of Pancharatra because we are not spontaneously on the platform of serving Krishna with devotion. So in order to come to that platform, we follow certain rules and regulations.
So based on what you're saying is correct. So based on what you're saying, what is the direct benefit of Pancharatra, following Pancharatra? Can you think?
So it purifies us and it prepares us for the consciousness.
Exactly, personal purification. That's why we follow the Pancharatra. That's why it's important for everyone to follow Pancharatra, is because this assists us with our personal purification. And when we actually become purified of the different anarthas, because that's the situation for all of us, is what's that verse? Sarvapadi vinimuktam tatparatvena nimalam hrishikena hrishikesha sevanam bhakti ruchyate. The devotional service is saying to Krishna, or Hrishikesh, the master of the senses. By serving Krishna, it has different benefits. And Prabhupada's given many different translations, but the translation I prefer is that there's many benefits of serving this Hrishikesha, the master of the senses, with the senses, Hrishika. And firstly is Sava Upadi. So you know what Upadi means? Yeah, false designation. So false designation, not because the actual designation is, Jivera Surapahoy Krishnera Nityadas. That's their actual designation, but an Upadi is a false designation. I'm a man, I'm a woman, I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer, I'm Indian, I'm Australian, I'm this, I'm that. So many different false identifications, but none of these things were actually Krishna's servant. So Narad Muni explains, he says, Sabapadi vinir muktam. So vinir muktam means you become freed. It's all removed. Mukta, you're liberated from these false designations. And Sava means all. So every false designation you have, by serving Krishna, you'll get rid of these false. And then it says, Tat paratvena nirmala, and you become restored to your original pure identity. And what is that identity? Servant of Krishna. Just by, it says, Hrishikesha Sevanam Bhakti. He said that's called devotional service, by engaging the senses in the service of the proprietor of the senses, Krishna. So that's the whole idea, is like to engage the senses in the service of Krishna, so we become purified, as you're saying, of all these false identifications. Because right now we're so confused. Just like we're reading this morning from the 7th canto, chapter 3, it's talking about Hiranyakashipu's endeavours to become immortal. But he's such a foolish living entity, he doesn't realize he already is immortal. But he wants to become immortal in this body, this temporary body. So he's bewildered. And we're all in the same situation. We're all bewildered by the external nature. Maya Prahita Jnana. And she's, Maya's got these different potencies. One is called the Avaranatmika, and one is called the Prapakatmika. So this Avaranatmika throws you down into the material pool. And the Prapakatmika Shakti covers you over. So it's just like, if you ever go out, you might not see so much here, maybe sometimes here, but in the country you get more opportunity to see mud and things like that. And it's just like you throw a stone into the mud, and what happens? You've seen that? When you throw a stone into the mud, what happens? No, not the mud. Just goes bloop, disappears. Whereas you throw a stone in the water, and you see splash and ripples. In the mud, there's a little bit of a splash, but not much. But so it's like that. It's like the living entity gets thrown down into material nature and covered over, never seen again. And it's like that when you get covered up by the material nature. So unless we're actually active in our endeavours to overcome the influence of the material nature, then we become absorbed and we become covered over by the material nature. So, there's no idea that there's anything different from this. There's no scope that one can actually be a scope of understanding. One can be a servant of Krishna. There's something higher than this. So, one of the points I wanted to make at the beginning is Rupa Goswami quoting from the Padma Purana, gives us two principles of devotional service. So what are those two principles of devotional service? Two prime principles. You studied Bhagavad Gita, it's mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita. What's the two prime principles of devotional service? Very good. Always remember Krishna and never forget him. So he says, Smartavya satatam Vishnu, Vishnu matavya jatuchit. You know the next line? Sarve vidi nisede shura etya evakinkara. So sarve vidi, all the rules and regulations are servants of this principle, to always remember Krishna and never forget him. So this is, you see, there's two facets as this talk is. There's two facets. There's the Pancharatrika and the Bhagwat. Right? So this verse, Smartavya Satam Vishnu, is talking about these things. We're talking about the rules and regulations. But what's the point of the rules and regulations? It's not, like we see Rupa Goswami also talks about in the Upadeshamrita. What's that verse? It talks about the things that are unfavourable for pure devotional service. Yeah, so Utsahanishta, and then there's what is it? Thank you. Atyahara prayasyasya prajalpo niyamagraha. So niyamagraha, Srila Prabhupada translates that in two ways. And what are those two ways? Yeah, following the rules and regulations only for the sake of the rules and regulations and not for the sake of spiritual advancement. And what's the other translation? Yeah. Or not following the rules and regulations. So it's neither is good. You have to, we follow rules and regulations with a purpose. Because you see, are most of you born in the West or are you born in India? Mostly born in India. So I'm sure you've seen, many of these smarter Brahmins, and often smarter Brahmanas are given a different sort of translation of what it means. But oftentimes they're very much a common way that the term smarta Brahman is used is that people are just absorbed in rules and regulations. But that's generally not the appropriate translation for smarta Brahmanas. They're more people who are very much expert with rituals and things like that. But we see that you will come across, different types of Vedantists or whatever in India who are more absorbed in rules and regulations and not understanding what the purpose of the rules and regulations are. And oftentimes we find new devotees in ISKCON are like that also. Is they join the temple and they hear about all the rules and regulations and they get so absorbed in the rules and regulations, and sometimes we see, unfortunately for them, is they wind up insulting or offending others because they have this very rigid approach to the rules and regulations but don't have so much of a personal dealing with others, and they try to impose rules upon people, not taking into consideration that person's individual capacity to follow the rules. We all have our different capacities, and that's something that needs to be taken into consideration. And the prime principle is to get back to this whole idea of always remember Krishna and never forget him. So if we're not cautious in the way we present rules and regulations to others, it may actually inadvertently drive them away from Krishna. So we need to be cautious of that, not to drive people away from Krishna, but to somehow or other fan their attraction. So it's a bit of a side sort of thing, but something we need to be aware of is not to be fanatical in our approach, because it won't help us in the long run. And that's the whole idea of practicing Krishna consciousness, to somehow or other become closer to Krishna, to be more absorbed in Krishna. So the Pancharatra helps us there because, as Mataji was pointing out, it helps us to become pure or purified. So the other aspect we want to talk about is the Bhagavad Vidi. Who knows what Bhagavad Vidi means? Chanting kirtan. Japa, does it also mean japa? But japa is regulated. Huh? So japa can kind of fit under Pancharatra because it's regulated. Preaching is Bhagavad Vidi. Presenting things like that. Bhagavad Vidi tends to be more towards what we call raganuga, spontaneous. There's different facets of devotional service in terms of degrees of advancement. First off, we have Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. Then what's the next? Raganuga. What's the full name? Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. Because it's still a facet of regulated devotional service, but it's more spontaneous. Then there's Ragatmika is someone who's a Raganuga Bhakta. They're like the residents of Vrindavan. These are Ragatmika Bhaktas. They're the more advanced. They're the ones we follow. What's the next stage of devotional service? Bhava Bhakti. That's where one's almost achieved. It's described in various books in all the different symptoms of those devotees. But that's almost at the level of prema. And then we have prema bhakti. So there's these four major divisions that are there. And of course, we read in Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's books, he gives many, many different smaller divisions and, within those different categories. So, Bhagavad Vidi is referring to one who is on the level of Raganuga. So it means, and generally we find, see the thing is for devotees is to understand that they're not mutually exclusive things. It's not like either you're a rules and regs man or you're a spontaneous person. You can't actually get to the stage of Raganuga Bhakti without going through Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, because and anyone who thinks like that is actually an illusion. That don't worry about this sadhana bhakti. This is for neophytes. This is for people who have no taste in devotional service. Because the reality is, everyone in this material world is fallen. Kalo Sudra Sambhava. We're born less than Sudras. We have no idea about devotional service. We have no idea about our relationship with Krishna. So, because we're covered over by the material nature, so we need to undergo a process of purification whereby we can come to this point of Bhagavad Vidi, Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti, and higher stages of devotional service. So, and Prabhupada describes this in various places, how one needs to go through. I've actually got a few references here. You mind if I read a few things to you? I think the first one I've got is here from the Bhagwatam. There are quite some interesting points. So when Vijay asked me to give this, Vijay Gopikeshwar asked me to give this class, I already have a prepared class on this topic, but it's got homework in it. I thought that's not going to work very well, so I had to do a bit of thinking. So this is a quote from the first canto, 5th chapter, text 38, and this is Narad Muni's instructions on the Srimad Bhagavatam. And there he's quoting, he's talking about chanting, receiving the holy mantras, the transcendental sound represents. Such sound should be received from the transcendental agency of the bona fide spiritual master, and chanting may be practiced by the direction of the spiritual master. That will gradually lead us to nearer to the Lord. So, and he's talking about their chanting in a regulated fashion. So again, this has that element of Pancharatra with it because it's regulated, even though the name itself is transcendental. But most of these activities we do in the morning, because they're connected with Krishna, are actually transcendental. Otherwise, unless it has that transcendental element to it, how's it going to purify us? It has to be transcendental, otherwise it will not remove the anatta. Because when you have a material problem, there's no material solution. There can only be a spiritual solution. We need to connect with Krishna to overcome this contamination. So then Prabhupada goes on to explain, that will gradually lead us nearer to the Lord. This method of worship is recommended in the Pancharatrika system, which is both recognized and authorized. The Pancharatrika system has the most authorized codes for transcendental devotional service. Without the help of such codes, one cannot approach the Lord. So Prabhupada is establishing this very clearly, because there are some devotees who have this view, as I mentioned before, and I won't go into names, but there was one sadhu who was very prominently stating that you don't need to go through these rules and regulations, you just go straight to the Raganuga, and he would speak very much about Raganuga. But Srila Prabhupada is very clearly explaining here, he says that without the help of such codes, when one cannot approach the Lord. So, because it gets back to the same point, because we are contaminated by the modes of material nature, we need to become freed from that contamination. And one of these days I'm going to get myself glasses that are multifocal, so I don't have to keep taking the silly things off all the time. Because when I look at you with these on, you're all fuzzy. It's really disturbing. As I mentioned before, asango hiyam hayam purusha is like, material nature and spirit nature cannot mix. It says asango hiyam, the soul, he cannot mix this asango, he cannot mix with matter, covered by matter but not mixing. So in the same way, we with our material contamination, with our materially blunt senses, with our material body, cannot approach Krishna directly. So therefore we follow Pancharatra to remove that contamination. So it's very, very important. If you want to actually become a devotee of Krishna, if you actually want to do transcendental service for Krishna, you have to remove this contamination. Because what we're doing now is offered through the medium of Guru. The service we do now goes through Guru, through Prabhupada. We, because of our contamination, cannot serve Krishna directly. In the absolute sense. Of course, we are all doing devotional service and we are connected with Krishna, but at this stage it's more prominently through the medium of the Guru rather than directly to Krishna. And Prabhupada discusses this concept in 3rd canto, 4th canto, a number of different places. It's a very interesting concept. So Prabhupada says, without the help of such codes, one cannot approach the Lord, certainly not by dry philosophical speculation. The Pancharatric system is both practical and suitable for this age of quarrel. Because as we see, Sanatana Goswami, he points out in the Hari Bhakti Vilas, that well-known verse, Yata Kanchatana Rasavidan Tata Dikshabdanena Dvijatam Jayate Nrinam, that like if one is initiated by a bona fide spiritual master, it starts by saying, just as like bell metal, when it's mixed with mercury in an alchemical process, becomes gold. You know what that process is? I learned this years ago. It's quite unusual. Huh? An alchemical process, yeah. It's chemistry. There's an old-fashioned way of saying chemistry. What happens is a muni, like a sadhu, right? At night, he'll drink mercury. So I don't recommend this. If you drink mercury, you'll die. Yeah. But the sadhu, because he has this potency, he can control it within his body, what it's doing. And so he drinks it at night. And then in the morning when he wakes up, he goes and urinates on bell metal and it becomes gold. So, if you could do that, you'd become very wealthy. But it's not a recommended process. Not in this day and age. But so, it seems like magic. But it's not. It's just a science. And you just got to know the science. So in the same way, when someone's initiated by a bona fide spiritual master in this day and age, even though they may come from a very, very low background, then they can become a brahmana. That's the Pancharatric system. But the Vedic system meant that you had to be born in a family of a brahmana to be initiated as a brahmana. So it was all based on janma. Whereas now it's based on the qualification. The person's qualification is to become a brahmana, not that they have the right birth. Because in this day and age, kalo sudra sambhava. And Prabhupada, he talks about, a tailor-pulling brahmana. You see them in India, these rickshaw wallahs, they're wearing Brahmin threads. And they like to tell you they're Brahmins, they're born in a Brahmin family. But is that the activity of a Brahmana? Are they exhibiting the qualities of a Brahmana? And we know in the Bhagavad Gita, Samadhamma taposa cham chantiraja vimecha jnanam vijnanamastikam brahmakama sabhavajam. There's peacefulness, self-control, austerity, purity, honesty, religiousness, wisdom. Krishna says these are the natural qualities by which a Brahmana works. So he doesn't talk about activities, he talks about qualities. A Brahmin is one who's known by their quality. Same with a Kshatriya, they're known by their qualities. Heroism, chivalry, bravery in battle. You look at like Bhishma, a typical, the emblem of a Kshatriya. Was he ever fearful in battle? Did he ever run away? Even he's fighting with Parashuram. who's an incarnation of Godhead. He wasn't fearful. Arjuna, he's fighting with Lord Shiva. He wasn't fearful. So these are typical Kshatriyas. So and they're known by their qualities. Someone may like to tote guns and shoot at people and beat people up who are a lot weaker and think they're Kshatriyas, but that's not Kshatriya. A Kshatriya is more inspired or enlivened when he takes on a greater opponent. A Kshatriya will never take on someone who's notably weaker, but in this day and age, I saw a picture yesterday in the news, because there's all this like strife going on in America right now with the race tension. And there's this woman standing, just a woman on her own, with her hands in the air, and there's like about 10 or 15 policemen with all these like heavy military sort of rifles pointing at her. Where's the bravery in that? You've got all these, just a man on his own without a weapon. Most women are no match for a man, because he's so much stronger. But here you've got these like big burly guys with all these automatic rifles right in her face. Where's the heroism or bravery in that? That's just cowardice. So, I mean, in this day and age, generally you don't find Kshatriyas, generally you don't find Brahmanas. It's all just Sudras, or less. Usually Mlecchas and Yavanas, like Prabhupada called Australia Mleccha Desh. It's a country full of Mlecchas. I'm born there. You've all come here. So, it's not, just because we may have been born in a particular family, it's nothing wonderful. It's nothing wonderful at all. But that we've come into contact with Krishna and we're serving Krishna, that is wonderful. So then Prabhupada goes on to continue. The Pancharatra is more important than the Vedanta for this modern age. So Prabhupada's making the point, because the fact of the Vedanta is no one can really apply it anyhow in this day and age. It's not particularly relevant. And, what's that verse in the Brahma Samhita? Forgotten. But there's a verse in the Brahma Samhita where Lord Brahma is talking about how you cannot understand. Adulavam, Atma Bhakto. Yeah, that you can't understand Krishna through the Veda. But even though Krishna is revealing in the Bhagavad Gita, he is the object of the Veda. He's the compiler and the knower of the Vedanta. He says, by all the Vedas I am to be known. So, when you look at that, how many books are there in the Vedas? 130, 140,000 books, something like that. I don't remember the number, but there's a lot of books. And the greater percentage of them aren't available anyhow. And even if they were available, who here could read them all? And once you've studied all the Vedas, then you might know Krishna? No, it's not that easy. Just by reading a book, as it says, Tako Pradishta Shrutaya Vibhina in the Mahabharata, it says you can't understand Krishna by logic and reason. One person, he's known as a rishi. Why is he known as a rishi? Because he's got a different opinion from somebody else. And it says, Shrutayo Vibhina. It says Shruta, the Shastra. Vibhina, many branches. There's so many branches to the Vedas. All different types of knowledge, even like when Vedavyasa divided it into different branches and he gave it to his different disciples, Jaimini, Yajnavalkya, all the different disciples, he gave them each a branch of the Veda and they studied that branch and got to know that branch. And their disciples divided it further and divided it further and divided it further and divided it further. And now you have more than 100,000 different books. And most of them aren't available anymore. So you can't understand Krishna by studying the Veda. Neither by logic, neither by going to a rishi, because rishis have all got different opinions. Huh? Yeah, there's so many different opinions. Matoya, opinion. And then it says, what is it? Dharmasya tattvam nihitam guhayam. Is the Dharmasya tattva, the truth about Dharma. The guha, it's a secret. Like guha means cave. Yeah? So it's like a deep, dark secret in a cave, So it's like a secret that's hidden in the heart. Mahajana Katasapanta. It's hidden in the heart of the great souls. So by following the path that's given by the great souls, then we'll understand the truth about Krishna. Not by independent study. You can study these books the rest of your life without Prabhupada's purports. You'll never understand. Because there's so many different conclusions. Just like in class, there was a question asked this morning. Prabhupada was elaborating in the purport that Brahma in the self-same body went back to Vaikuntha. He said, and the devotee asked the question, so how can you take that body, the material body back to Vaikuntha? But nowhere in the purport did it mention that Brahma had a material body. So what Prabhupada's indicating is he had a spiritual body. Because only a spiritual body can go to Vaikuntha. So without the explanation of the acharyas, or the explanation of devotees, we'll never understand these things, because there's so many different ways you can understand things from the Veda. And we see people, when they study, they come up with so many different conclusions. I mean, all you have to do is just go to a Bhagwat Saptahara in India and you'll find out how many different conclusions there are. Or go to these different classes you hear, there's how many different conclusions there are. How many different, even within in Christianity, how many different branches are there within Christianity? They're all worshipping the same single person. All worshipping God through the Son Jesus Christ. But even that there's Unitarians, there's Trinitarians. Trinitarians believe in the Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost. That much I know about Christianity. I think Unitarians just believe in God. They don't have this concept of the Trinity. So even within Christianity, there's so many different divisions. There's the iconoclasts, the people who worship all the relics, of saints and things like that. And there's so yeah, in Hinduism, I mean, you travel around India, how many different varieties of Hinduism is there? It's unlimited. And sometimes you see people from Hindu backgrounds when they come to the temples, all the little different rituals they do. They put their face like this, they put their face like that, put their tongue, they poke their tongue out, they do smash coconuts and light fires and all different types of stuff, So, that's not the way to understand Krishna. The way to understand Krishna is through following a great personality, such as we have the good fortune of following Srila Prabhupada. Because he's not a person who's in any doubt about Krishna. It's not like he doesn't know who Krishna is, or he's guessing where we might find him. No, he knows Krishna. He's seen Krishna. And that's the point that's made in the 4th chapter by Krishna. He says, Tadvidi pranipahatena pariprashnena sevya upadekshanti te jnana jnaninas tatpadashana. He can jnaninas tatpadashana. He can give you knowledge. Why? Because he's a tattvadashi. He's seeing the truth. It's not like it's a guessing game for him. And maybe you'll find it. Maybe you'll find it in the first canto of Lord, or maybe you'll find it. No, he knows. He knows the truth. He may not know. Just like sometimes like advanced devotees, like we look at Gorkishore Das Babaji. He wasn't a book-read scholar, but that doesn't mean he doesn't know the truth. Because you don't have to be a scholar to know who Krishna is. You don't have to be a scholar to understand the process of devotional service. It's what's in the heart is the connection with Krishna. So we see with great personalities like that, whereas someone like Bhakti Saraswati Thakur, Prabhupada would call him walking encyclopedia. He was a very, very knowledgeable person. He went to Calcutta and he read the whole Calcutta library in a very short space of time. I don't remember what it was, but it wasn't very long. I can't read a book in the amount of time it took him to read the whole library. And that's not, you go to a library like, the British Library or the ANU, the National Library, millions of books. It's not just like, a set of Bhagavatams. Or, Prabhupada did, 70 volumes of books, 60 volumes of books. I mean, I've been reading Prabhupada's books for almost 40 years now. I still haven't read them all. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he read the whole library in I think it was 6 months or something like that. It's just incredible. So, that in itself is not a qualification to be a great devotee. Neither is being illiterate a disqualification. It's not about that. It's like, is one who has unflinching faith in the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the Spiritual Master, then the import of all Vedic knowledge is automatically revealed by that process of having that faith. So we just accept that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We don't have any doubt about it. You have to have this unflinching faith, just accept. You have to have unflinching faith in the Guru. And Prabhupada says this unflinching faith means if the Guru says the snake is a rope, kill it, the disciple will kill it. Of course, the Guru's not going to play any silly tricks like that, but the point being is like, we just accept what the Guru says, not try to analyze and scrutinize his words. Is he right? Is he wrong? But that's not the role of the disciple to do that. So anyhow, Prabhupada's pointing out here that in this age, the Pancharatra is more effective because the Vedanta, we cannot actually understand the truth about Krishna through following the Vedanta. No, we have to take shelter of a suitably qualified person. And then through that surrender, as Prabhupada says, is pariprashnena sevaya, through submission and inquiry, then the truth actually becomes revealed to us. Not that we just, buy. It's just like at the end of the Gita. Krishna's just spent, 45 minutes explaining to Arjuna the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. And what does Arjuna say at the end? He says, Tat prasadat maya chuta. He says, by your mercy, I now understand. Not, oh, I'm so smart, I figured it out on my own, I don't need you. Which is very common these days. It is like people think, well, there's also the Mayavadi. One time Prabhupada was in Mayapur, and they were walking along the bank of the Ganga, and then one of the devotees helped him up to the top of the bank, and then Prabhupada knocked his hand away, and the devotee was shocked. He was like, why did Prabhupada do that? And then Prabhupada said, this is the Mayavadi approach. Is they use the Guru to become elevated, then they reject the Guru. So no, that's not our approach. Our approach is we understand that by the mercy of the Guru, by the mercy of the Vaishnavas, I'm actually able to make advancement. And in Mahaprabhu says this in the Chaitanya Chamrita. It's Sadhu Sangha Shava Shastra Koi Lava Matra Sadhu Sangha Sava Siddhahoy. It's the verdict of all the revealed scriptures that even by a moment's association, one can achieve all success. So this is our path. Is we take shelter of devotees, we take shelter of the Mahajans, and this is how we understand the process. And we see, Prabhupada has never said, oh, you just become a Raganuga Bhakta, don't worry about this Pancharatra. No, he's saying that we have to go through the Pancharatra for this personal purification. We should never think that I'm so purified I don't have to worry about this sort of stuff. Because if you're so purified, why are you here in this material world? Are you an avatar and you've descended to help us all? I mean, I probably wouldn't know if I met one anyhow, but it's unlikely that any of us are in that category, or we're in the category of someone like Srila Prabhupada, Shakta Vaishyavatar, who's come down here to guide us all in devotional service. Probably unlikely that any of us are in that category. So therefore, if that's not the case, the reason we're here is because of our material conditioning. Therefore, if we want to overcome this material conditioning, we need to apply a process. And the process that's effective in this age is the Pancharatric system. And that's, it describes how Narad Muni actually gave this process. Seeing the difficult situation in this age, seeing the contamination that people were going through and their inability to deal with it, then it says that Narad Muni, and this is in the Bhagavatam, that Narad Muni and other great sages gave the process of deity worship to help people overcome this contamination. Because we're all in that condition. We just have to accept that. Even though we may think, oh no, I'm not this, I'm not. No, the reality is we are. That's why we're here. Simple. I'm in jail. It's just like a prisoner thinking that he hasn't done any crime and he's in jail. No, he's in jail because he's done a crime. Of course, because it's a material system and because there's imperfections, we all have imperfect sense and stuff. Sometimes people get put to jail who are innocent. But Krishna's system's not like that. It doesn't have those flaws. It doesn't have those defects. Krishna is infallible. And because Yamaraj is functioning under the guidance or the agency of the super soul, like the super soul's directing Yamaraj on who to punish and who not to punish, therefore there's no mistakes. You can't go to Yamaraj's court and say, I'm innocent, I didn't do it. Yeah, actually you did, because he's got all the information. He knows everything that everyone's done. So it's an infallible system. I'm just going to put this on top of my hat because it's hurting my head. No, this is okay. It's hurting my head because pressing it at the side of my head. But I just thought to hide the ugly thing at the back. That's okay. Yeah, fine. Okay, great. No problems. Then a few other interesting quotes I'd like to read to you. So, I mean, see, what I'm getting to with this whole talk is the necessity for practicing deity worship. Now, some devotees may say, "Oh, yeah, but deity worship is for neophytes." Yes, it's very beneficial for neophytes, but it's not only for neophytes. And I can give some very, very prominent examples of persons who worship deities and actually became very, very absorbed in deity worship, and it wouldn't be appropriate to call them neophytes. Like Rupa Goswami. Who did Rupa Goswami worship? Radha Govinda. Okay. Sanatana Goswami? Madan Mahan. Who else can we think of? Gopal Bhatta Goswami? Who? And Radha Raman. Radha Raman. Then? Kadada Pandit, who did he with? Tota Gopinath, yeah. Very beautiful. Who's seen Tota Gopinath? Very beautiful deity. And keeping in mind he's sitting down, you imagine how tall he was before? Huh? Who else can we think of? Who did, what was his name? Vakrishra Pandit, who did he worship? Just trying to think of that song. You know the song? Jaya Radha. Look at Prabhupada. So many deities he worshipped. And even if we struggle to accept that, well, maybe they're not so advanced or whatever, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself worshipped Radha Krishna deities. So the thing is, like, deity worship is essential for everyone. And Jiva Goswami makes that same comment in the Bhakti Sandarbha, that actually everyone should be engaged in deity worship because it helps us. In the neophyte stage it's very helpful because it helps us in our personal purification. Because if we look at deity worship, it's very, very regulated. You need to rise early in the morning, you need to bathe, you need to have clean clothes, you need to have a clean house, everything needs to be clean. First thing, that's the first rule of deity worship. Everything has to be not just clean, spotlessly clean. There's a letter that Prabhupada wrote to a devotee called Shilavati. This was in 1967 or 8, I think. Shilavati is like the first Pujari in ISKCON. Prabhupada personally trained her. And then in this letter, Prabhupada was talking about different rules of cleanliness, cleaning your teeth, things like that, cutting your fingernails, you should wash your hands before you touch anything on the altar, things like that. And then he said, the idea is summit cleanliness. So we all know what the summit means. Summit's like the peak of the mountain. When you get on the summit, what do you know about when you're on the summit? Any idea? You can't go any higher. That's as high as you can get. So he said the idea is summit cleanliness. That will satisfy Krishna. So deity worship is very much about these regulated lifestyle, that we do things more so in the temple than home. The home deity worship is largely based around the needs of the home, whereas the temple worship is based around the needs of the Lord. So it means everything's done at a particular time. Everything, like the same menu every day, etc. like that. But everything needs to be done very, very cleanly. So this immediately is going to help us with our personal purification. Because Prabhupada said, Krishna is the supreme pure. This says, was it Pavitram Paramam Bhavam? This says in the 10th chapter of the Gita. So this Pavitram Paramam, in some places Prabhupada, like these days they talk about extreme sports and extreme drinks. I've got no idea what an extreme drink is. I actually do have an idea of an extreme drink. Apple cider vinegar is an extreme drink. I don't know if you've ever had that, but it's like, it's so hard to drink that stuff. But, so anyhow, Prabhupada translates this Pavitram Paramam as extreme pure. There is no one more pure than Krishna. He's beyond pure. But he said, in order to approach the supreme pure, we have to become pure. So as long as there's some contamination within our heart, we cannot approach Krishna. Therefore, Jiva Goswami says, therefore the process of of deity worship is essential for everyone because of the material contamination. This is in his Bhakti Sandarbha, which Prabhupada quotes in the Madhya Lila 15.108. So it's a very important reference that, because he's actually pointing out how important deity worship is. Because, we have all these different contaminations, as we were talking about before, or parties, etc. like that. But by engaging in simple activities like, rising early in the morning, that helps us to overcome so many things. It helps us to regulate the mind, because many of these parties, many of these designations are generated from the mind. The mind is telling me so many different things. The mind is telling me, I'm so handsome. Oh, I'm a man. I'm a woman. I'm a this. I'm a that. The mind's telling us all these different things. So by rising early in the morning, it helps us to control the mind. By becoming clean, it's also helping us to control the mind, helping us to control the senses. Rising all these different activities we do in connection with deity, they're helping us in our individual purification. So it's very, very important. So I'll read a few more references from Prabhupada. This one's from Madhya Lila 19.152. Sometimes neophyte devotees think that they can continue the Shravan Kirtan process without worshipping the deity, but the execution of Shravan Kirtan is meant for highly developed devotees like Haridas Thakur, who engaged in Shravan Kirtan process without worshipping the deity. However, one should not falsely imitate Thakur Haridas and abandon deity worship just to try to engage in Shravan Kirtan. So, and this is an interesting quote from Prabhupada, because sometimes we hear devotees will say that, yeah, but I don't want to do this deity worship, I'm just going to chant Hare Krishna. Okay, that's a very good thing to do. Just chant Hare Krishna. Don't do anything else. Thakur Haridas would chant Hare Krishna 23 hours a day, sometimes 24 hours a day. Sometimes he was so absorbed in his chanting, he would forget to eat. He wouldn't sleep. He wouldn't drink. Who's at that platform of devotional service? That's a very, very elevated, that Prabhupada's making the point there. That's a very elevated person who can actually be peaceful. Because the thing is, it's all about the mind being peaceful. What's the point of sitting down and trying to chant 24 hours a day if your mind is agitated? If the senses are agitated, what's the point? And we see with Thakur Haridas, he was tested so many different times. He was tested. He was tested by a prostitute. He was tested by Maya Devi. He was beaten with a whip in 22 marketplaces. And what did he do the whole time? He just chanted. I bang my finger with a hammer. I don't chant. I say something unpleasant. It's like, I'm not going to kid myself to think that I'm like that. I know. To some degree, I know my limitations. And I think it's very important that we're very realistic about our degree of development in devotional service. Not to say we say, oh, that's the end of it, I'm not going to advance anymore. We need to be very realistic about where we are at. And then from that point we can advance. But if we have some unrealistic idea of our development in devotional service, that's detrimental to us. We need to be very realistic. So, therefore Prabhupada is saying here that the deity worship needs to go side by side with hearing and chanting. And oftentimes we hear that Prabhupada would use this analogy like two parallel tracks on the train. They need to go side by side. We have the Shravana Kirtan, that gives us the taste, the enthusiasm in devotional service. But the Pancharatrik, the rules and regulations, that gives us the purity. So without the purity, we won't get the taste of the chanting, the hearing and the chanting. Without the taste of the hearing and the chanting, we won't be able to maintain the rules and regulations, the deity worship and all the regulated lifestyle. So they're symbiotic. They need each other, for us to succeed. So here's another interesting. This is from Bhagavatam purport 7.5.28. Deity worship should be continued along with hearing and chanting. In all the mantras there are specific potencies of which the Grihastha devotees must take advantage. But if one chants the holy name of the Lord, he receives the result of chanting Nama, i.e., because when you say all these deity mantras, they generally conclude with Nama, which is usually a pranam mantra concludes with Nama. many times. By chanting the holy name of the Lord, one can reach the platform of love of Godhead. One might therefore ask, what then is the necessity of being initiated, by which one receives deity mantras? The answer is that even though the chanting of the holy name is sufficient to enable one to progress in spiritual life to the standard of love of Godhead, one is nonetheless susceptible to contamination because of possessing a material body. So it's this whole thing, because we have this body, it's apt to getting influenced by the material nature. It's just like, the dharma or the nature of water is it's wet. So the nature of this body is it gets influenced by the material energy. That's just the package. It's what it is. Don't expect anything different. Until you become completely purified, don't expect anything different. And therefore, we need to engage in a process that's constantly assisting us in our purification. And then Prabhupada said, consequently, special stress is given to the Achan Vidhi. One should therefore regularly take advantage of both the Bhagwat process and the Pancharatric process. So this is the thing, it's like we need to regularly engage in the aspects of Pancharatric Vidhi, especially deity worship, particularly deity worship, because it's so suitable for this age, it's so practical. Because you could do, like for instance in previous ages, it says Kriti Yadhyayato Vishnam Traitiyam Yajato Makai Dwapare Parachayam Kalatad Harikirtana. Then in the Kriti Yuga, there's Dhyayato Vishnu, one would meditate upon Vishnu. That was the process for the age. Then Traitiyam Yajato Makai, one would do fire yagya. So the thing is, like, to sit and meditate, you look at Valmiki Muni, he meditated for what, 30,000 years? 60,000. So has anyone got that sort of time? I mean, can anyone sit down here and meditate for 60 minutes? How about 60 seconds? I mean, it's very, very awkward. I mean, could you do that with your children? No. Would they give you 60 seconds alone? No, it's just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen in this day and age. So that is, while meditation is an important part of deity worship, it's very controlled bursts. It's not like it's the whole thing start to finish meditation. Of course, as we develop in our spiritual life and we become more, regulated in our mind and senses, then we can increase the meditation. But in the beginning, very, very difficult. And then it says, Chaitiyam Yajato Makai. So it means that this yagya was the process in Treta Yuga. So the thing is, in yagya, you need mountains of ghee, mountains of grains, solid gold utensils, all the shuk and the shruva and all these different things are all made of gold. And then when the yagya was over, they just leave them on the ground. They use them once. It's like these days, you get these clay utensils in India, they use them once and they throw them. Yeah? But previously it was gold. And they just used the gold and they leave it on the ground. Then the poor people would come and take the gold, and that's where they got their wealth from. But who can afford that? Could you imagine? Like a yagya spoon this long made of solid gold, or sometimes you get them this long, solid gold. Could you imagine how much that'd be worth? Millions of dollars, and just leave it on the ground and walk off. No one would do that. So this also helps you understand the fallen nature of this Kali Yuga. We're reusing things again and again and again. And now they're using plastic and all sorts of unmentionable ingredients because you just can't get other things. And also, people, the wealth is not there to afford this, but also when you do a fire yagya, you're actually inviting the Lord to come and reside in the fire. So then the fire, you sort of, please come, please stay, please accept my worship. You ask the deity to come there and stay and accept your worship. So for the Brahmana, he's seeing that the fire is actually the tongue of Vishnu. And it's the mouth of Vishnu, he's feeding the Lord. But no one else can see that. Other people might be gathered around, they like the mantras, they like to see the whole ritual and stuff like that. But are they actually seeing that this is Vishnu present? Generally not. So it's very difficult for them. But and then it says Dwapare Parichayayam. In Dwapara Yuga, the process was deity worship. And yes, it's especially favorable in that age, the previous age. But the thing is, they would worship the deity with great opulence, incredible opulence. You know, like all the ornaments with gold and jewels and so many, amazing, opulence. I remember, just to show you, just give you a practical demonstration of how much the opulence is reduced even in Kali Yuga. In the temple in Detroit, they've got these beds for the deities. I got some photos of them. They're about this long, this wide, and about this high, and they're made of solid sandalwood. You couldn't buy that much sandalwood now to make beds like that, and it would, if you could, it would cost you tens of thousands of dollars just to make these beds. So in Kali Yuga, the opulence is reducing all the time. But the thing is, with this process of deity worship, it's a very good means whereby we can actually develop a tangible relationship with Krishna, because we're actually, when you're doing meditation, for instance, it's very difficult to capture the Lord in the mind. You actually have to be your mind has to be very, very still, very peaceful, to be able to capture Krishna in the mind. And the same for when you're doing yajna. It's hard for the common person to see Krishna in the fire. But when we all go to the temple, or like here we have Jagannath Bhava Subhadra and Gaura Prabhupada, we can see the Lord. And when we do service for the Lord, we can have a kirtan for him, we can feed him, offer him some food, we can offer him an arati to receive him, we can bathe and dress him. So we can have a tactile relationship with Krishna. And in this day and age, we're very much about the gross external senses. People are nowhere near as subtle as in previous ages. In previous ages, people would, just like I was talking in a class I gave in Wollongbar a few days ago about previously the Kshatriyas, they had this potency, like Arjuna, he had this potency, whereby he didn't have to see a target if he could hear it. So it's a subtle skill, And even the Kshatriyas, the way they would throw their astras was a very subtle skill. They'd chant a mantra into water and they'd cast the water onto the arrow, and that would then put the astra into that arrow. So it's quite a subtle art. But these things are gone. Everything now these days is very, very gross, very tactile. The senses, you've got to experience it, you've got to feel it. So deity worship gives us that opportunity, whereby we can actually have a direct experience with Krishna. And just one last quote. I think this is the last quote I've got here that I want to read. I mean, there's so many nice quotes that Prabhupada gives, but this is really interesting. Because we see in our temple, we have Radha Krishna Vigraha, Sri Sri Radha Gopinath. But actually, Radha Krishna cannot be worshipped through Pancharatric Vidhi. They can only be worshipped through Raganuga, or Bhava, or Prema. So, because we're actually on the stage of, Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, then Krishna makes an adjustment whereby we can approach him. And the Archamurti or Archi Vigraha means the mercy incarnation of the Lord. Krishna agrees to take a form which is made of stula, or elements, earth, water, earth, jewels, mind, paint, stone, metal, things like that, sand, in order to give us that opportunity to have a direct exchange with him. So, and also he makes an adjustment, when we have this Radha Krishna Vigraha, so that we can actually, according to our level of advancement, engage in services. Lord Narayan is worshipable by this is from the 4th canto, 24, 50, 45 and 46. Lord Narayan is worshipable by the Pancharatric Vidhi or regular principles, whereas Lord Krishna is worshipped by the Bhagwat Vidhi. No one can worship the Lord in Bhagwat Vidhi without going through the regulations of the Pancharatric Vidhi. So again, Prabhupada makes that point. The Gaudiya Vaishnava conclusion is very clear. You go through gradual, step by step. You start at the lotus feet and you work your way up. You don't go straight to the 10th canto. You don't think straight away, I'm an advanced devotee. You have to go through the Pancharatric Vidhi, Bhagwat Vidhi, and step by step. It's like a ladder. There's a progression. Burijan coined that term, the yoga ladder. It's a progression. You go gradually up. Although there may be a Radha Krishna Vigraha, the worship of the neophyte devotees is acceptable as Lakshmi Narayan worship. He's taking it in that mood, because otherwise, because of our lack of advancement in devotional service, if we tried to worship Radha Krishna directly, then we'd more than likely commit offences. So he takes this in this mood and very clear rules and regulations on how to do things and stuff. like that. Worship according to the Pancharattra Vidhi is called Vidhi Marg, and worship according to Bhagwat Vidhi is called Rag Marg. If we do not follow the regular principles in the Vidhi Marg platform and keep our eyes trained to spot offences, we will not make progress. So sometimes you see, I hear sometimes devotees talk about worshipping in the Vrindavan mood. That's beyond our pay grade, really. We're just not at that level yet. Prabhupada said the Vrindavan mood means you cannot help but think of Krishna 24 hours a day. So when we've actually got to that point where we're just constantly absorbed in Krishna 24/7, we're sleeping, we're dreaming about Krishna, we're waking up, everything, we're just dreaming about Krishna. None of this other stuff, none of my baby, my family, my this, we're just absorbed in Krishna. Then there's some scope that we could actually approach this Vrindavan mood, but before that stage, no. So, I mean, I just tried to give you a little bit of an introduction into the synthesis of the Pancharattra Bhagwat. You have to have a balanced approach. Both need to be there, and this will help us to go forward in devotional service. But also, I've also tried to give an emphasis on the importance of deity worship, and especially temple deity worship. Srila Prabhupada didn't encourage devotees to have deities in their homes. He encouraged them to have pictures, because when you have a deity, there's a commitment, there's an obligation. When you have a picture, there's no obligation. You get the same benefit, and I'll be showing that in the worship seminars we're doing in the temple on the next 2 Sundays, showing devotees how to worship a picture or a deity. It's the same thing, just a few small adjustments, but you get the same benefit. That's the wonderful nature of this process, because of its transcendental nature. The benefits there to be had. Even like, to give you an example of the wonderful nature of this process, if you're offering an arti in a temple, you'll get benefit from offering that arti. If you see a person offering arti, you'll get the same benefit. Prabhupada told the devotees in France, if you pay your obeisance, if you can't be in the temple room for because you're doing a service or something, and if you pay your obeisances while the conch is being blown, you hear the conch blown, you pay your obeisances, you get the same benefit as you were standing there doing the arti. That's the transcendental nature of this process. Another one is like, if you can't take darshan of the temple, if you take darshan of the chakra, you get the same benefit as taking darshan of the deity in the temple. So it's a transcendental process where it's just like a wire that's alive with electricity. Wherever you touch the wire, you'll get electricity. Doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be the end. So it's the same with the transcendental process. Wherever you come into contact with this process, you'll get benefit. So whether you worship a picture or a deity, you will get the same benefit depending on your consciousness. If you understand that the picture is the same, because Krishna says in the 11th canto, there's a nice chapter there, chapter 27 in the 11th canto, is explaining to Uddhava the process of deity worship. And in there, Krishna says that he manifests in 8 different forms, and one of those forms is a painting. So a modern day representation of a painting is a picture, a photograph. Sometimes you have paintings, but generally photographs seem to be much more popular these days, more common. And so Krishna is as present in the photograph as he is in his deity, as he is in his Swayam Bhagavan original form. Because this is an incarnation. There's five incarnations of the Lord, 5 known incarnations. There's I forgot them all now. There's Vyuha and Vaibhav, Vilas, the Antaryami in the heart, and also the Archa Vigraha. These are the 5 incarnations of Krishna. So the deity is non-different from Krishna. There's no difference. Just because he's manifest in material elements, he does that for you. He doesn't do it because he needs to be manifest. He does it for you, because can you see spirit? No. So if Krishna didn't manifest in those elements, how would you see him? So, and this is why he's known as the Archa Vigraha. He agrees to appear in a form that you can see, so you can serve him. So that's why it's known as the mercy incarnation of the Lord, because he's making a special dispensation for those who are materially contaminated, so they can develop a relationship with him. So it's definitely very beneficial to engage in deity worship. And if you're not a Brahmin, that doesn't limit you. There's so many services that can be done. There's backup services. There's shopping for the deities, making garlands for the deities, cleaning paraphernalia for the deities, helping the cooks, chopping up vegetables, grinding chandan on festivals, making flower garlands, decorations for the temple for the festivals. Even coming before the deity and having kirtan is serving the deity because you're glorifying him through his holy name. The idea is to make everything in our life connected to Krishna. Even our children. Why are we raising children? So they become devotees of Krishna. Then that's God consciousness. If you're doing it just so you can enjoy children, so you can have lots of children, that's sex life. But if we connect it to Krishna, then it's God consciousness. So that's the thing. It's just, and when you have deity worship, it gives you the perfect opportunity to connect every single aspect of every activity of your day. You wake up in the morning early and have a shower. Why? So I can go see Krishna. I go to bed at a certain time at night. Why? So I can get up early in the morning so I can go see Krishna. So even sleeping is devotional service because you're using it so the body is rejuvenated so you can serve Krishna. So just connect everything to Krishna and then your life becomes perfect. It's very simple. Okay. Yeah, of course. Two microphones, you mean stereo.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Microphone testing.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you very much for a wonderful class. Prabhu, at the end you mentioned about Lakshmi Narayan worship and comparing it to Radha Krishna. I was just wondering, when we go see the deities in the temple, I've heard that we have to, at least because we're not in the mood of a Ragatmika, do we see them as Lakshmi Narayan or do we see them as Radha Gopinath? Because I think it's much sweeter to see them as Radha Gopinath than Lakshmi.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely Radha Gopinath because he's got a flute. He's in Sri Banga Sundari, he's in the threefold. It's like holding a flute, this threefold bending form, intimate pastimes with his associates. These are things that are exclusive to Krishna. There's four, I can't remember the fourth one, but there's four special qualities that Krishna has that no other incarnation of Narayan has. But nonetheless, he accepts the worship in the mood of Narayan. But therefore we need to, like, both are present. So that's the thing, it's like, what's your name, bro? Jagannath Gopal. That's it. You're Jagannath Gopal. You can't be somebody else. You can't be Nrsimha Kavachadas. You're Jagannath Gopal, and that's it. Krishna's not limited like that. He has no limitation. The interesting story, Prabhupada, Allen Ginsberg was trying to, I remember when I was a younger devotee, like some of the Gurukul boys would play this game, Stump the Swami. They try and ask a question that Maharaj couldn't answer. So Allen Ginsberg was trying to do that to Prabhupada. And he said, Swamiji, he said, is your Krishna so great he'd create a mountain that he can't lift? And Prabhupada said, yes, and then he will lift it. That's the nature of Krishna. He's unlimited. There's nothing he can't do. There's nothing he can't be. There's nothing. Anything you can think of, he can do it. We can't put limitations on him. You see, limitations is coming from me because I'm limited. He's not limited. So, yes, he is Lakshmi Narayan, but we're seeing him as Gopinath. Because he is Gopinath. Ultimately, it's Radha Gopinath. But in order to facilitate us, so you've got to understand this. This is for us, not for him. He's not there thinking, Om Namo Narayana Namah or anything like that, That's not what's going on for him. He's there as Gopinath, the one who's enjoying pastimes with the gopis, the Lord of the gopis. He's not about Aishwarya, but he creates that environment for you so that you can worship him in a way that you're not going to commit offense, because you need the rules and regulations to approach him. We all need those rules and regulations to approach him. We can't, because like, if you look at the residents of Vrindavan, you look at the gopis, right, when they're serving Gopinath, what is their, to the best of our understanding, what is their consciousness? I mean, I don't really know that I'm qualified to ask this question, but what I'm trying to say is, What are they thinking about?
Thinking about how to please Krishna.
Yeah. Is there any thought about themselves? Nothing. There's nothing. There's no inkling of a thought about how to satisfy their senses there. But when we approach the deity, that's there. And so therefore we need, like, the Vrindavan consciousness is something which is not ready for right now. It's a very, very elevated consciousness. I can't talk about it very much because I don't know much about it. I've read some things, and I've heard Prabhupada talk about it, I've heard other senior Vaishnavas talk about it, but I just understand that things like that are way above me. And therefore, this Aishvarya is necessary because, see, with the Aishvarya, with the Vaidhi, there's rules. It gives you clear guidelines, It's just like when you drive down the road. There's clear guidelines. You stay within your lines, you follow the speed limit, you stop at the red light, you go on the green light, you do this, you do that, you do that. Why? Why do they have all those rules? I'll give you an example where they don't have rules. India. Right? What happens in India? Not just accidents, death. India has got the highest road toll in the world practically. Every year there's about 130,000 people killed on the roads. One Indian tried to explain to me it's because there's more cars in India. There's not more cars in India, there's less cars in India than they've got in America. But the road toll is so high. Why? No rules. Everyone just does whatever they want. They think they're all, Nelson Piquet or something like that, They can drive around 200 kilometers an hour down a road that's designed for camels. And they're surprised, they're all wailing and carrying on when something happens. If you drive like an idiot in a car that's not designed to go like that, on a road that's not designed to be driven on like that, why are you surprised when you have an accident? Why are you surprised when you're killed on the road? It's just normal. But no, so the thing is, like, Krishna agrees to accept our unqualified offerings through these rules. It gives us that guidance so that we know how to serve him. Do it like this, do it like that. It should be done in this way. It should be done, cooked like this or cooked like that, or you should offer the arati like this, or you've got to follow these rules of cleanliness. You've got to follow these rules of punctuality. You've got to, don't touch things with your left hand. Do all that kind of stuff. There's all these rules there for our benefit, to help us to get, because our goal is not to stay on the Vaidhi. Our goal is to get to the stage of being prema bhaktas. We don't just get to this point and stay still. No, we want to move forward till we get to the point of being a prema bhakta. Yeah?
Can I just add a clarification? So from what I understood, so we follow the rules as much as we can with perfection. But can our mood be that we're serving Gopinath, but through his mercy he'll accept it as Lakshmi Narayan because we're not...
It's Gopinath. It's definitely Radha Gopinath. Because Narayan doesn't hold a flute. Narayan doesn't have a threefold bending form. Narayan's not engaging in pastimes with loving devotees. And Narayan's not as beautiful as Gopinath. There's no one more beautiful than Krishna. And the pastimes that Krishna engages in, look at this pastime depicted in this painting here, Narayan doesn't do things like that. Narayan doesn't go around, poking holes in the butter pot and feeding it to the monkeys, and the thing is, like, Krishna is doing these pastimes simply to attract the hearts of his devotees. Narayan is very much awe and reverence, it's like he's standing there giving the formal darshan and everyone bows down. But the thing is, we need that because we don't actually understand who God is right now. We've got some vague notion of what God is. But we need this Aishvarya. So we really cement in our consciousness, like it's burnt into our consciousness, the difference between me and God. I'm not God. I'm not the controller. I'm not the enjoyer. But unfortunately, we all think we are. In every facet of our life, we're thinking like that. We're thinking that I'm the controller, I'm the enjoyer. And we try to, in different ways, control and try to enjoy. Cool.
Thank you for the wonderful class. By doing the deity worship at home, whether it's Gauritai or Jagannath Subhadra, we are creating a personal relationship with the deities at home. Or going to a particular temple, we create personal relationship with Radha Gopinath or Shyam Sundar or Madan Mohan or Radha Parthasarathi. So that kind of attachment to that deities, I mean, my Gauritai or your Jagannath Subhadra, if I'm going out of the city, I'm giving it to somebody, please worship in my absence because I cannot take them with me. So this kind of relationship is good because it's a physical attachment to the deity form of the Lord. So how devotee should take that,
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Okay, so by doing the deity worship at home, we are creating a personal relationship with the deity form.
Yeah.
Right. So the same way when we go to a particular temple, we are creating a relationship like I am attached to Radha Gopinath in Sydney and Radha Madan Mohan is somewhere else, so I love this temple more, than as compared to that one. So I feel more familiar with this particular temple. So this is like my home. Whereas Krishna is same everywhere, So how a devotee should take that?
A Chitta Beta Beta Tattva, simultaneously one and different. Even like there's a pastime, I can't remember if it was Ramanujacharya or Jamunacharya. There were two deities fighting. I think might have been Ramanujacharya. The deities, Ranganath and one other deity were fighting. It might have been Bharadwaj or someone were fighting because they wanted Ramanujacharya to be in their temple. Yeah. So the pastimes go on like that. Simultaneously one but different, and different deities have different moods. Like Gopinath's got one mood, Ballabha's got another mood, Madan Mohan's got another mood. Radha Madhava, Radha Shyamasundar, different moods. But ultimately it's the same person. But they're all expanded. All the deities in ISKCON, according to Prabhupada, are expanded from Radhalandanishvara. So they're the original Radha Krishna deities in ISKCON. Prabhupada said all the deities in ISKCON have expanded from these deities. And so they've also got a mood, a different mood. And then one time, Prabhupada was in I can't remember where he was. He may have been in New Vrindavan, but I think it was happening somewhere else. But the devotee said to Prabhupada, something about how Radha Vrindavan Chandra were very beautiful. And then Prabhupada said, yes, Radhalandanishvara are also very beautiful. And then, I can't remember the exact story, but then Prabhupada said something along the lines of like, yes, but Radha Vrindavan Chandra this is country beauty, but Radhalandanishvara, this is city beauty. So he really liked them, So it's not unusual that devotees have their favourite deities. That's quite normal because of the mood of the deity, the different features of the deities, the way that the pujaris are serving the deities, the temple environment, the community around the deities. There's so many nice things there, there's the thing is like, the idea is become Krishna conscious. Whatever you need to do to become God conscious, and if that means you're attached to this deity more than you're attached to that deity, what's the problem? Just become Krishna conscious. That's the essence of it. But I do encourage that to develop relationships with temple deities, not so much having home worship. Prabhupada was very clear on that. He didn't want devotees to have home worship because it's a distraction from the preaching mission. And of course, he said in one letter, he said that if the temple is far away or otherwise unapproachable, then one could have deities. So if you're living 30, 40 kilometers from the temple, then you could have a case for having home worship. But even my wife and myself, I mean, I've been offered many deities over the years. We've got a picture altar because I go travelling. I've got no concern. We offer our food at home, and I go worship the deity in the temple. And it's like, when I'm sitting at home chanting my rounds, I chant in front of the deities. Like I said, we've got two altars in our house, not one. We've got one in the Brahmasthana in the centre of the house, and we've got one in the northeast corner. And the one in the centre of the house has got Radhalandanishvara, and then we've got Radha Shyamasundar on the wall over there, and Radha Madhava on the northeast corner. So all our favourite deities we've got there, And then I go and worship Radha Govardhandari. I mean, it's just natural. It's just like, with different people, Some people you develop a particular type of relationship with, other people you develop another type of relationship with. It's not, not unusual. Yeah. Someone over here had a question. Oh, you had a question? Okay, no worries.
You said that Prabhupada didn't encourage home worship because it distracted from the preaching mission. So why do so many people nowadays seem to have deities at home? And they're not people who live very far from the temple as well. Often it's people who live quite close.
My understand. I mean, it's just. See, the thing is, I've devoted the greater part of my devotional service to understanding Prabhupada's instructions on deity worship, because my primary service is teaching deity worship. Whereas others, I think they're just simply not aware of the instructions. I do think it's as simple as that, because, I mean, just look around at the devotees. How many devotees do you know who would deliberately disobey Prabhupada's instructions? I don't think devotees do things like that. Some may, but I think it's rare. So it's just my understanding is that they just don't know Prabhupada's instructions on that topic, and so therefore, my service, one of the things I'm trying to do in the ministry is just to, promote what Prabhupada said about deity worship, and with this new edition of the ISKCON deity worship book also, is to try to work in a way that we're kind of making that more faithful to Prabhupada's instructions on deity worship. Because Prabhupada did give a lot of instructions, not so much about the details of deity worship, but about the principles of deity worship. Yeah? Sure. Anything else? Put it back there.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. At home, sometimes we don't keep very much clean. Like in a hurry, we have to go into the deity room. So, is it something offensive, or do you have to change the clothes, or something you have to pick up from the room, or?
Yeah, cleanliness is one of the primary practices or activities of deity worship is cleanliness. So, better you don't approach the deity without bathing.
No, that's all being followed. What I mean is like when we, how do I explain? Like we have, after having bath or something, you go outside and come back. Again, we didn't take shower like second time or third time.
Yeah.
Do you need to go every time with that kind of thing?
Yeah. The thing is, like, you need to be clean when you approach the Lord, as simple as that, because He's the supreme pure, and unless we're pure, we can't approach Him. So the ideal is to adjust your lifestyle and the worship in such a way that, we do approach Him cleanly. So like, for instance, I'll just give an example here, because I don't know your lifestyle or your situation at all. But, say for instance you rise in the morning about the same time every day, then you get up and shower, and you do your deity worship at that time. You cook for them and offer them at that time. Then throughout the rest of the day you wouldn't do any worship. When you come home in the evening, you have a shower again and you do some other worship. So you structure it so it's like that. And the idea is to develop a structured life, so that you're actually cultivating sattva gun, or the mode of goodness. And I was just talking with Vijay about this when we were coming here, about how passion is increasing. Kali Yuga is having more and more effect on all of us, and the passion is increasing. So then what happens when the passion increases is we become more adept at rationalizing, reducing the rules and regulations, reducing the sattva, because that's just the influence of passion. But actually, if you want to approach the transcendental platform, you need to go through sattva gun. You have to become pure, clean, mode of goodness, before you can actually achieve Shuddha Sattva. So therefore, work on regulating yourself in such a way that you do it at the same time. And like with home worship, it doesn't have to be precisely the same time. Temple worship should be basically to the minute. Some devotees say to the second, I've never been able to find any clear information on that. Prabhupada does say it in places to the minute. But just try and regulate yourself so you're doing activities at the same time every day, and you're not whizzing off to the shop or stuff like this. You know, like if you're cooking something for the deities, you don't have a certain preparation, just cook what you have. You know, if you don't have like a special type of yogurt you want to add, then fine, just cook it as it is. You know, just because the things that impel us to run out to the shop to buy a special ingredient is more that we're not so well prepared, which tends to indicate the mode of passion. And so the mode of passion will drive us to do things that may not be so conducive to devotional service. And as we know, according to the Bhagavad Gita, the mode of passion ends in? What does passion end in? Distress. Always ends in distress. And so we've got to... And what does the mode of goodness result in? Illumination. You understand things. Yeah? So we've got to move away from passion and move more towards goodness. And this is our constant endeavor. But we don't want to just become sattvic. We want to come to the mode of goodness for Krishna's pleasure, because ultimately it's going to lead us to Suddha-sattva, this purified goodness. And in the state of purified goodness is Vasudeva Shabditam. You understand, because that's the place where Vasudeva will appear. Because Krishna's father was called Vasudeva. It's not a coincidence, because that's the purified state wherein Krishna or Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, will appear. So we cultivate goodness so we can achieve pure goodness, purified goodness.
Beautiful.
You got it sorted?
You said that different deities have different moods.
Yeah.
How can one understand what kind of mood a particular set of deities have? Because for me, when I see any deities, they're just Krishna to me. I wouldn't know what their mood is unless somebody told me. So how would you know what their mood is? And also, is that mood of the deity the basis on which a person becomes attracted to a particular set of deities?
I mean, if someone told me the mood of a deity was such and such, I probably wouldn't believe them. I mean, I don't really know, because I'm not a very advanced devotee. And I feel that to understand the mood of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is that possible, for one thing? And it would seem to me that in order to do such a thing, one would most likely need to be a very, very elevated soul. To be actually, it's like, I mean, I've only just met you, so how could I understand your mood? I mean, I might get some sense of it by the things you do and by the things you say, maybe, if I was astute and, perceptive. But, for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, I feel that's a very, very different thing. And, I mean, another aspect you can look at also is in a society like ISKCON, Srila Prabhupada's the Acharya, so the deities do tend to take a little bit the mood of the Acharya, which is a preaching mission. So that's also there. There's different considerations, but, as far as understanding I mean, I've been to temples and I sensed a different mood in the temple. And I've heard it discussed about, the deities have different moods. I've seen, stories that would illuminate that deities have different moods. So from that I understand that there are different moods in the deities, and you can see that. But to actually understand the mood of the deity are beyond me. And different things are going to attract us to the temple. Sometimes it's the devotees, sometimes it's the location, sometimes it's the building, sometimes it's the deities, sometimes it's the prasadam, kirtans. So I think these are all factors which add up to attracting us to a particular place. Sometimes it's just convenient because it's next door.
So if only a highly advanced devotee would be able to understand Krishna's true mood, then when people say that they're attracted to a particular set of deities, not simply a temple, but a particular set of deities, then is that generally to do with the appearance of the deity, or the clothes they wear, or
it could be many things. I mean, that's the thing. Because it's just like, it's just like, you live in Sydney, right? What are your reasons for living in Sydney? Huh? And what are your reasons for living in Sydney? Working. And your reasons for living in Sydney?
Service and work.
Yeah. And my reasons for being in Sydney? We've all got different reasons for the same thing. So I don't think you can. And devotional service is not a stereotype, pre-packaged thing. It's different for everyone. And a really interesting statement that's there in the first book of the Brihat Bhagavatamrita. Gopi Pranadhanaprabhu in his purport describes how Krishna has a unique quality or mood for every single individual living entity. So the way he reciprocates or interacts with you is different from the way he interacts with you. It's different from the way he interacts with every single person. Unique. That's Krishna. We can't do that. But Krishna's like that. He's unlimited. So I don't think it's appropriate to give like a pre-packaged sort of response to it's this, because I don't think it is. I think there's many different things that attract devotees to the deities. Many different things. And it's different for every person. And even like, some of your reason for being attracted to a deity may be similar to my reason, but there's other things as well, so it's never the same. Some places I go, I'm just attracted by the worship. I think the worship is fabulous. Some places I go, I think the cleanliness is fabulous. Some places I go, I just think the deities are so beautiful. Like Balaram in New Mayapur, he's just so beautiful. It's really melts your heart to see him. He's got such a pleasing smile and face, everything very pleasing about him. Or Balaram in Vrindavan, he's got such a big chest, really strong like a lion. So Lord Nityananda in New Govardhan, very beautiful deity. So it's just different deities, different features just attract my consciousness. And I'm sure what it is for me, it's not the same for others, it's different. Because I'm an individual, you're an individual, Krishna's an individual. And individuals have their own reasons for doing things, and it's always going to be different, it's never going to be the same. So yeah, it's not something you can give a pre-packaged response or pre-packaged understanding. Thank you. Prabhu.
Thanks, Prabhu. You've explained to us very clearly as to how to worship a deity and what are the rules that needs to be followed when we go to the temple in terms of cleanliness, in terms of doing it properly. Now, it's quite possible that prior to knowing this, or even prior to coming to Krishna consciousness, we would have gone to temples many times, say without having a bath, or not in a very unclean state, or not with that state of mind. Now my question is that a sin, and if so, can that be countered?
You mean as an offense or something?
Yes.
I don't think so. I mean, like, if one was to touch the deity or go on the altar in an impure state, that would definitely be considered to be an offense. And I mean, some people might think, some people might say it is offensive to come into the temple in an impure state, and some people wouldn't do it. I know, for instance, in India, that Vrindavan particularly, ladies won't go to the temple during their period of contamination, their monthly period of contamination. That's the rules they follow here. But then, if we were to introduce such things in Western temples, for instance, we'd probably have to exclude, 90% of the people who come to the temple. because it's just a different time, place, and circumstance. And it's interesting that in the 4th canto, there's a that verse Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. There's a verse and purport there where Narad Muni, I think I was reading from that chapter just before. Narad Muni is discussing that the worship has to be done according to time, place, and available conveniences and inconveniences. And then in the purport, Srila Prabhupada discusses about, maybe I'll just see if I can find the purport for you rather than trying to guess at what he says. It won't take me long. I'm going to put my glasses on so I can see it. The joys of the material body. Okay, so this is 4.854. The method of worship, chanting the mantra and preparing the forms of the Lord is not stereotyped, nor is it exactly the same everywhere. It is specifically mentioned in this verse that one should take consideration of the time, place, and available conveniences. Our Krishna consciousness movement is going on throughout the world, and we also install deities in different centers. Sometimes our Indian friends, puffed up with concocted notions, criticize, this has not been done, that has not been done. But they forget that this instruction of Narad Muni to one of the greatest Vaishnavas, Dhruva Maharaj, one has to consider the particular time, country, and convenience. So what's convenient in India may not be convenient here. What's convenient in a community of Brahmins may not be convenient in a community of Malechas. You know what I mean? So it's like, but when it comes to the altar, going on the altar and touching the deity, serving the deity directly, the rules, that's it. You need to follow a certain degree of rules. Of course, you can get more and more refined in the rules you follow, but at least a minimum should be there, so we need to be clean before we touch the deity. So, I mean, like, strictly speaking, one shouldn't take prasad unless you've bathed and rinsed your mouth and everything, out of respect for prasad. But then, you've just come from work and you want to take prasad, because we all know the effect. You take prasad, and it has quite a calming effect on the consciousness. You eat prasad, you're satisfied, your consciousness is quiet. You've just been out working, working with computers all day long, or dealing with unpleasant people all day long. Or, I've discussed it because I don't work. You couldn't convince me to get a job. Even if you paid me $1 million a week, I wouldn't do it. Huh? No, just a lazy man. That's all. But but I discussed with devotees about the interactions they have at their workplaces, and some devotees find it very difficult. So, and I find myself, like when I used to do Sankirtan, I sometimes have a very challenging day, and you come and you just take Krishna Prasad, and the mind just settles so nicely. It's very peaceful from it. So, you've just come from work, you've had a hard day at work, and I can't take prasad till I have a shower, so I've got to go home half an hour, then back to the temple another half hour. So sometimes it's not, it's not practical. But if you're in a Vaishnava community, or you're living right next to the temple, it's much more easy. But the main thing, as very first thing I discussed was, remember, Smartavya Satatam Vishnu. Always remember Krishna, never forget him. So that's the prime thing we do. Is like, what can I do in this situation that's going to help me remember Krishna? If I can follow the rules and regulations, that's even better. But obviously, when I'm a pujari, I'm on the altar. We follow the rules and regulations because I can't touch Krishna. But if it's a matter of taking darshan of the deities or taking prasad or things like that, at least rinse your mouth before you eat, out of respect to prasad. Wash your hands. If you can wash your feet also, that's even better. But the environment's just not set up. Like in Mayapur, Vrindavan, not even so much in Vrindavan. In Mayapur, the environment's set up for washing your hands and your feet before, and rinsing your mouth before eating prasad, honouring prasad. But at least we should rinse our mouth and wash our hands before and after. So there's some basic rules that need to be there, but some things it's not practical. You just have to be realistic about what we can and can't do in a place like Sydney. Okay. before. And I'll read the rest of it. Prabhupada speaks quite strongly. He says, sometimes our Indian friends, puffed up with this with concocted notions, criticize, this has not been done, that has not been done, but they forget the instruction of Narad Muni to one of the greatest Vaishnavas, Dhruva Maharaj. One has to consider particular time, country and conveniences. What is convenient in India may not be convenient in the Western countries. Those who are not actually in the line of acharyas, who personally have no knowledge of how to act in the role of acharya, unnecessarily criticize the activities of the ISKCON movement in countries outside of India. The fact is that such critics cannot do anything personally to spread Krishna consciousness. If someone does go and preach, taking all risk and allowing considerations for time and place, it might be that there are changes in the manner of worship, but that is not at all faulty according to Shastra. So Prabhupada's very clear on it there, that sometimes you need to make adjustments. And he did make adjustments many, many times. And of course, the thing is, an acharya is one who is able to make adjustments, who has that understanding of what to adjust and what not to adjust. It's not that we should start adjusting the worship process. Whereas we're talking on the way out here about, people who worship the deities dressed in pants. That's an adjustment we don't have the adhikar to do. Prabhupada has given us clear guidelines: dhoti, chada, sari, and choli. We don't adjust these. These are the guidelines he's given. These may be details, but the things have been given by the acharya, so we don't adjust these things. Yeah. Anything else? Okay, good. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki. Samaveta Bhaktivinoda ki. Jai Nitai Gop Premanandi.
Narsimha Kawach Prabhu ki. Thank you very much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. We'll take prasadam now. Sekadasi prasad. Jai. Yeah,